Hello. So today we're going to be talking about these face pieces.
Which are not originally industrial face pieces. They were originally military, but I'll get into that in a moment once he finishes his spiel about what they are.
Yeah, it's a little bit debated what they are specifically. Technically, these two were Pomasan 1600Js, and technically that is a Wilson face piece for the Wig F2 kit as it came in this box. However, as we're about to get into, neither Wilson nor Pomasan designed these initial face pieces, and they're actually modifications of a design made by Acushnet.
Yes, and this is where I'll come into the topic. During the 1930s, the U.S. military had been growing tired of the Kops, Tissot, and Monroe-based face piece, which was a flat sheet of rubber, either not calendared or molded, which would have a chin seam, and, it's not a very secure method of manufacturing a mask. So what Acushnet ended up doing, the Acushnet Processing Company, they introduced the very first injection molded face piece, which is what you will see here with some minor differences. The designation of these face pieces, I believe, was E32. There were several different variants of the face pieces. There was a service face piece and a training face piece. I know the training face piece was E32R35, but I don't recall the service face piece. But theoretically, the service face piece would have had this style arrangement where it has the pseudo optical lenses, because these were actually classified as optical lenses with the military because they were so close to your face that they provided a very good field of view to be as a service mask, but you could also use optical devices with them because of how close they sat and how narrow they were. But I digress. The face pieces would have been used with a 32-inch, 27-inch M2 hose and a M1 series canister with a M1 series kidney bag carrier. For whatever reason, the military did not like the design, probably due to the present M4, I believe this is M4 flutter valve, or spearhead valve as they're called, and they ultimately ended up going with the M2 style service and training face pieces, which had come around probably around the tail end of the 1930s. These were probably around in the mid-30s, and then the M2 came shortly after. Whether that was designed originally by Acushnet, I'm not entirely sure. I think it might have been, but
They played pretty heavily into its final design and the revision process to it.
and the odd thing about these face pieces is almost no original military examples exist. There is one that is in some Russian collection, which I'm not sure where it is currently. And the main way to tell the military face pieces apart from the industrial ones is the lens frames will be painted black, obviously. There will be white tape around the spearhead valve. They will not have a canister thread. It will just be a straight shank hose stem. And then the buckle tabs will be a black painted metal, probably black brass of some sort. And then the head harnesses will be probably a M4 self-centering harness, although it was probably not designated the M4 at that point, but we don't know the experimental designation. So I'll let you cover the rest.
Yeah. So again, these are they were all made by Acushnet. If not made by Acushnet, the molds were sold off later, as they tended to do, especially with Leco. We have a mask over here that we're almost certain was designed by Acushnet, but then eventually produced by Pomasan. And yeah, basically just shit gets sold around. Acushnet really did a lot of basic fundamental stuff for U.S. industry. The actual three variants that we have here today, obviously they're all slightly different. This one has the M4 spearhead valve, like you mentioned, and this one does not. They're both 1600Js technically by the filter. The 1600J, the next one in that line would be the 1750, which is of course the chin-mounted Pomasan, also known as the Leco number 45. However, even among these three face pieces that we have here, there's a variety of small differences. This one, for instance, has the standard Pomasan head pad, while this
With
one,
the Pomasan clinch tips, which are very horseshoe shaped. That's the way to tell.
yeah, I mean it's fairly distinctive because it's the only one that has a small circle for the back of the head pad. While this one has this, which was likely improvised by an industrial worker or some other company.
This is very modern materials, and I would almost be confident in saying this was a more modern retrofit done by someone, probably maybe in the 1950s or so at the very earliest. It presumably would have had an original Pomasan style harness.
Yes,
And the final, go ahead.
Yeah, this final one back here, this is the Wilson. It's been called the Wig F2 in circles because that's what it said on the box. The label's a little bit decayed, but that's actually the kit designation.
I wonder if this would have been designated the G1, if anything.
I don't like to speculate like that.
Yeah,
It's entirely
don't
possible.
start calling it that. If you do, we'll cut your liver out and feed it to the horses.
Let me see. So the big thing with this one is actually in the parts list in there, which I'm not going to bother showing you. It actually mentions that it has synthetic lenses available. Unfortunately, these are now actually sticky, and they've shrunk a little bit and don't seal in the mask, so they're kind of shit. Another interesting thing is Wilson actually trimmed off the...
Here, hand me that one on the floor there.
Sure. Has trimmed off the military... What the fuck are those things?
Temple bridges. These are basically to secure the original head harness webbing, which didn't use webbing on the military ones. It uses like weird stamped brass assemblies that would stick through these bridges and help them keep them retained in place so that they wouldn't warp around. Because all the tension was coming from this spot, but they didn't want the harness to finagle itself in any other direction. So that's what those bridges were there for. And obviously Wilson, being Wilson, they decided they wanted to be a special snowflake and eliminated those entirely just by cutting a mere half-inch of rubber, or no, like a quarter-inch of rubber away, so that those were not present.
Yeah, this is also complete pot metal.
Yeah. I believe it's zinc-plated brass, perhaps, or nickel-plated that just got probably zinc-plated or something.
Probably. That's steel right there.
Yeah, it's steel.
And then, of note, for those of you that can't really tell back home, this one is most likely, if these may have been bought from Acushnet, but this one was definitely molded by, you know what, actually, I'll take
No,
that back.
because if you look on the chin piece there was originally an Acushnet stamp.
Oh, yeah, but they could have...
That was ground off. I'll unscrew this and try and get a closer look at the Acushnet stamp, because all of these have it. I keep bumping the camera. I don't know if that's showing up at all, because the clamp on the tripod is in the way, but I will do my best to rotate it a couple times and show that off to you. It appears, there we go, it's coming in. So right around there is the Acushnet stamp, which you may or may not.
It's taken off here.
Yep.
I think Duke's noted on some of his videos in the past that Acushnet tended to use recycled rubber blends.
Yeah,
so
that was like their big thing. Acushnet would buy reclaimed rubber from factories where it wasn't fully cured rubber, but it was mixed with the curing agents. And what Acushnet would do, they would buy all that scrap, and they would calendar it together so that it was a new fresh batch of rubber, and they would recycle it. This wasn't, melting down rubber, because you can't really do that once it's cured. So this was, I'll just leave that off.
Just leave it.
Yeah, these canisters are a bitch. So that's the whole thing. That's why there's probably so much variety in the quality of the face blanks, whereas this one is rock hard. That one's sort of dilapidated and melty. This one is perfectly fine. This is presumably Acushnet getting their shit together with different rubber blends to test with these face blanks.
Yeah, but it is very interesting. This one actually has a very distinct odor to it, as future owners will probably find. There are a lot of mold imperfections on it, but it's also the most flexible. And of course, going back to the problem with the exhale valves, this one actually does have a guard on it, which is probably Wilson.
Yeah, Wilson more than likely did that. I have not seen any evidence of military examples that have those guards.
Which is funny, because this is really just
it's simple.
steel.
It's like even simpler than like the M1 flutter guards, which are like have to be like rolled and embossed in like several different places.
Yeah, but overall, it's a very simple, very logical face piece, and it's probably just about as cheap to produce these as it is to make M1 service masks.
Essentially, yes. And I would like to reproduce these someday, but it would require getting a good condition example. Sort of like this Wilson here, where it has like the original hose stem intact, whereas these have been stretched out with the canister threads, unfortunately, because Polmasen does not know what they're doing. And eventually reproduce these as their original service mask configuration. However, that's given these examples, and that isn't a possibility at the current moment. The only other thing to point out is with this example, the Wilson, it does have this weird little tab there, which hooks onto one of the crimps of the eye lenses. And obviously the Wilson ones have black painted lenses, whereas the Polmasen ones uses a copper, which is usually plated nickel, whereas this one is completely worn off, or they just never bothered to plate it.
Yeah, Polmasen's a little bit interesting. As you can kind of probably tell from this video, Duke and I have slight disagreements about these things because we're not really sure yet. So our opinions differ slightly. They're really weird, really interesting masks, and I'd like to get more of them, even though this is more than, I think there's only like, 5 examples? And
pretty much, and I mean, that's not even including like the military ones, which there's pretty much like only one that we know of.
Yeah. I mean, this is like the majority of the face pieces, and even looking at them, we still have more questions than answers.
I'm almost willing to believe that like 90% of the E32 series training and service masks got converted after this. The only development that came out of this style of face pieces is that they were dicked around with for aircrew configurations for a decent bit, and then eventually Acushnet used the same eyepieces to develop the Navy Diaphragm Mark III, which was trialed as a tank crew mask with the Army, but the Navy ate that shit up for whatever reason.
Yeah, the Navy's fucking stupid.
They love their fucking head canisters, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about industrial masks is that technically any of these I could claim that they were merchant marine issue, and you motherfuckers can't prove shit.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate, whereas with military stuff, you need to have, like, full documentation on where it was, and if you don't have that, then your opinion is nothing.
Yeah, because boomers.
Because boomers. But I think that's really all I can cover regarding the history of the military aspect of these face pieces. If you have any other notions regarding the industrial side.
No, I think we covered it pretty well. Again, the key point that I like you guys to take home out of this is this is really another example of Acushnet, now Titleist, by the way. I want to mention that Acushnet actually went on to become Titleist because they figured out how to actually center the cores in golf balls, because Skipper got pissed because people kept giving him shitty golf balls, so he made his own fucking golf balls, and like they're like a multi-million-dollar company.
And they were also the first, obviously, to injection mold a gas mask. Like, this is the first mask that was injection molded.
Yeah, fucking Skipper was goddamn batshit, but also a fucking genius. Don't piss that guy off. But yeah, basically, I mean, this, and then you have the Polmasan 1700 series face piece. There's so many U.S. industrial masks where we've sat down at the end of the day, particularly located around Polmasan, or even Wilson, honestly, where it's like, actually Acushnet did this. I mean, without Acushnet, we wouldn't have these, we wouldn't have the 1700, we wouldn't have the fucking...
Hell, even most of the Wilson G2 and G4 series face blanks are based off of the original M2 face blank that didn't have rifle skids.
Exactly, yeah. So it's basically... Acushnet is the U.S. industrial company. MSA did some good shit, but the really heavy-hitting stuff that no one noticed...
It's all Acushnet. They were behind the lines with U.S. Military development. They would always... They'd get contracts here and there, but it was never for a lot of their own designs. Well, some of them, yes, but like they kind of designed all of the service mask face blanks, and other companies just kind of improved upon them.
Yeah, they're the company that you would call when you couldn't figure something out.
Yeah, so, essentially. I think that's really all there is to it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's it. I just wanted to reiterate how fucking cool they are. And on that note, yeah, I guess we're done here.
Alrighty then.
Cool. Alright, whatever.